You wish to know of him, the fallen hero of the Horde? Ah, then listen closely, traveler. For when the night grows thick and the embers whisper, the swamp of sorrows remembers all. The marsh winds speak of him, the warrior once called Drak'thul, though time and madness have stripped that name from most tongues. Some say his ghost still wanders those fetid waters, armor rusted, eyes hollow, forever searching for an honor he can no longer reclaim. I met him once, long ago, but to tell you of that night, I must first tell you of the Horde as it once was, before the world knew peace, before the drums grew quiet. When our people crossed the shattered skies from Draenor, and the earth itself trembled at the march of the orcs. He was not a war chief, nor a chieftain of renown. His tale was not sung by bards or etched into the stones of Orgrimmar. Yet his deeds, and his fall, shaped the spirit of the Horde more than many who bore titles. His name belonged to those who bled for honor, who believed the Horde's heart was more than conquest and chains. We were young then. The clans had united under the banner of the Black Rock. The portal had torn open between worlds, and Gul'dan's fell promises had turned our blood to fire. We were soldiers in wars we barely understood, and among us Drak'thul stood tall, not because he sought glory, but because he believed. He came from the Frostwolf Clan, kin to Durotan himself. Not of his bloodline, but close enough to share their quiet pride and fierce loyalty. He had the pale eyes of the northern snows and the scars of one who had seen too much even before his first battle. His father fell to ogres when Drak'thul was but a boy. His mother raised him in the valleys of Alterac before the war tore them from their world. When the clans gathered and the blood pact was sworn, Drak'thul followed, though the fell troubled him. He felt the corruption creeping in the veins of his kin, the hunger, the rage, and feared what it would make of them. But what choice did he have? When the war chief commands, a warrior obeys. He marched through the dark portal beside Doomhammer's legions, his axe glinting green beneath the sky of a new world. The scent of human soil, rich and foreign, clung to his armor. The Horde swept through Stormwind's lands, and though Drak'thul fought well, he saw the madness in their victory. Villages burned, innocents fled, and still the warlocks whispered promises of dominion. He killed because he must, but each death weighed heavier. I remember him sitting by the fire after the sack of Grand Hamlet, sharpening his blade, eyes lost to the smoke. "This is not our way," he muttered, more to the stars than to me. The elements turn their faces. I hear nothing but silence from the spirits. He was right. The shamans had grown quiet, their power smothered by fell fire. Where once they called upon wind and stone, now they begged demons for strength. And though Drak'thul fought on, something inside him began to crack. When the war turned and the Alliance pushed us back, Doomhammer rose, casting down Gul'dan's treacherous shadow council. For a time, honor returned. The Horde became soldiers again, not puppets. Drak'thul found hope in that, even stood at Black Rock's spire when Doomhammer struck the traitors down. But fate is cruel, traveler. For even as the Horde sought redemption, its doom was already sealed. The humans rallied. Lothar fell, but his death hardened them. The Second War ended in chains for us, and for Drak'thul in shame. He survived the fall of Black Rock and the rout that followed. He fled east with a handful of broken warriors into the Swamp of Sorrows, that gray and stinking wasteland where the ground bleeds rot and the air hums with sorrow. There, he made his camp among the ruins of an old Draenei temple, its stones half swallowed by the marsh. Years passed. The Horde was shattered. Thrall was but a rumor, and in that lonely swamp, Drak'thul began to hear whispers. Some said it was the Fel still clawing at his soul. Others thought it the ghosts of the temple, the lost spirits of the Draenei, who had once prayed there before the orcs burned their world. But I have heard those whispers too, traveler. They are real. They slither between the reeds at dusk, soft and cold, like wind through bones. They call names, they remember sins, and they remembered him. Drak'thul tried to live as a hermit, hunting crocolisks, fishing the murky waters, meditating as the frost wolves once did. But the land itself seemed cursed, the soil barren, the skies always gray. He buried his comrades one by one until only he remained. Loneliness is a cruel weapon, sharper than any axe. In time, he came to believe that the swamp's voices were not punishment, but a calling. That perhaps the spirits sought to forgive him, to cleanse him of the feel blood that still burned in his veins. But the whispers were not kind. They spoke of the sea beyond the marsh, of dark waters where something ancient stirred. They promised redemption if he would only listen. And so he did. He built a crude shrine on the coast, carving runes into the stones. Runes no shaman had spoken in ages. He chanted in the old tongue, calling not to the elements, but to the depths. And the depths answered. One night, beneath a moon shrouded in storm clouds, the sea rose up, not with waves, but with voices. The tide shimmered with green fire, and from it emerged a darkness that stank of salt and shadow. Drak'thul fell to his knees, believing it a sign from the ancestors. But it was not the ancestors who came. The being that spoke was no spirit of Draenor, nor Azeroth. It was something older, something that had slept beneath the waves since the world was young. The Naga whispered its name to him later. They called it N'Zoth. It offered him visions, a chance to restore the Horde's lost glory, to wash away his guilt in service of a new master. He resisted at first, but isolation weakens even the strongest, and when the swamp's silence returned, leaving him alone again, he gave in. He began to serve the whispers, to gather relics, to dig among the ruins for secrets best left buried. That, traveler, is when I found him. I was younger then, a wanderer like yourself. I had come to the swamp seeking herbs and quiet, not ghosts. But on that night, I saw the firelight through the fog and followed it. He was there, hunched over a stone altar, muttering to himself, eyes gleaming with a feverish light. When he turned, I recognized him. Though time and solitude had withered him, I could still see the proud Frostwolf in his bearing. "Drak'thul?" I asked. He looked at me for a long time. Then he smiled, a broken, haunted smile. "No," he said softly. "Drak'thul died at Black Rock. I am what remains." The swamp wind howled then, as though mocking his words. And for a moment, I thought I saw shapes moving beneath the water, scales glimmering just below the surface. He spoke long into the night, telling me of his dreams. of a great eye watching from the deep, of promises made in the dark. His voice was calm, almost soothing, but behind it I heard madness. He believed he was preparing the world for what was to come, that the Horde had failed because it sought power without understanding, that the true path lay not in conquest, but in submission to the abyss. I left before dawn, chilled to the bone. A year later, rumors spread, fishermen vanishing along the coast, strange tides rising from the sea. Some said they saw Naga near the shores, bowing to a lone orc who spoke to the water. And then, silence. When next I returned to that place, his camp was gone. Only the shrine remained, the stones slick with seaweed, the runes faintly glowing even after years. They say his spirit lingers there still, bound by his own folly. Neither servant nor master, neither alive nor dead. The swamp of sorrows holds him, as it holds so many of the Horde's regrets. And so, traveler, when you pass through that land, if you hear whispers in the mist, do not answer, for some voices never fade. After that night, I could not sleep. Even the stars above seemed dimmer, as though the swamp's sorrow had followed me beyond its borders. For many seasons, I tried to forget the name Drak'thul, but Azeroth does not allow forgetting. The past, like the tide, returns. When word reached me that a new war chief had risen, a young orc named Thrall, born of Duratan and Draka of the Frostwolves, I felt a stirring of pride and a whisper of hope. At last, perhaps, the Horde would reclaim the honor it had lost. Yet when I thought of Drak'thul, I wondered, would he have rejoiced, or would he have scorned this new Horde, free of fel but chained by memory? Would he have seen Thrall's compassion as strength, or as weakness? Years later, fate answered that question. When the orcs of the new Horde began to rebuild in Kalimdor, I journeyed east once more, across the sea to the blasted lands. I sought relics of the old wars, remnants of the dark portal, shattered weapons, the bones of comrades who never found rest. The world had changed, but the swamp remained the same, heavy with mist, its waters stagnant, its air thick with regret. And beneath that stillness, something had awakened. Where once I had seen silence, now I felt presence, as if the earth itself breathed with uneasy life. Strange coral growths clung to the rocks where no sea reached. The frogs were silent. Even the wind dared not speak. It was then that I saw him again. He stood upon the shore, his back to me, staring out toward the horizon where the sea met the fog. His armor, once bright with Frostwolf symbols, was dull with corrosion. His hair had gone white as bone, but the voice that rose from his chest, ah, traveler, that voice still carried command. "You should not have come here," he said without turning. "Nor should you still walk this earth," I answered softly. He smiled faintly. "The earth has forgotten me. The sea has not." He gestured toward the horizon, where faint lights flickered beneath the waves, like stars drowning beneath black glass. "They call," he said. "Always they call. I thought to silence them, but they offer truth. The Horde's truth." I asked him what he meant. He turned then, and for the first time I saw his eyes clearly. They were not the eyes of an orc. They glowed faintly blue, like the reflection of a deep ocean, lit by no sun. "The Horde was born of blood and bondage," he whispered. The Legion made us slaves, and we called it strength. Now the old ones offer freedom. If we only listen. He spread his arms to the sea. Can you not hear them? I could hear nothing but the soft hiss of the waves, but I saw the water shift unnaturally, circling around his feet as though alive. He was lost, I realized, lost to something vast and cold, a mind that moved beneath the waves, older than the world itself. He was a relic now, not of the Horde, but of its madness. Still, I could not strike him down. He had once been a warrior of the Frostwolves, kin in spirit, if not in sanity. So I asked him, "Why have you not gone to Orgrimmar? Why not seek Thrall? He might heal what's left of you." His laughter was hollow. "The war chief," he said. "He would chain himself to peace, as Doomhammer chained himself to pride. They cannot see that honor and freedom are illusions, soft cloths draped over rot. The world is older than the Horde, and it belongs to the deep." His words chilled me. I thought them madness, but a part of me, a small, frightened part, wondered if he spoke some darker truth. For even then, strange things stirred in Azeroth, the shifting sands of Silithus, the whispers among the Naga, the unease in the very stones. He told me then of what he had seen, visions that haunted his dreams. "A shadow beneath the ocean floor," he said. "A vast eye, sleeping but never closed. It dreams of the surface, of war and fire. It dreams of the Horde. It remembers us." I told him that such things were best left forgotten, but he smiled again, a thin, sorrowful smile. "We are its memory," he said. "The Horde was not the first army forged in chains, nor shall it be the last." The tide crept higher, lapping at his boots. I stepped back. He did not move. "I am not your enemy," I said. "No," he murmured. "You are only the echo of what I was. You still think you fight for honor." He turned away again. "Leave me, old friend. I have work yet to do." I should have left then. I should have walked back into the fog and forgotten his name. But I lingered, watching him kneel and press his hands to the wet sand, chanting in a language that was not Orcish. And as he spoke, the sea answered. Shapes rose from the surf, scaled and serpentine, their forms glistening in the moonlight. Naga. Their eyes gleamed with malice and worship. Drak'thul did not flinch. He spoke to them as though to brothers. I fled before they saw me. By the time I reached dry land, my heart was pounding like war drums. That was the last time I saw him with mortal eyes. Seasons passed. The Third War came and went. The scourge swept across Lordaeron, and the world drowned in its own ruin. Thrall led the Horde west, to Kalimdor, and we began again beneath red banners. But always, in the corners of memory, the swamp called to me. Sometimes, when I closed my eyes, I could still hear his voice beneath the sound of waves, a low murmur, half prayer, half curse. Years later, when the Naga began to rise again, when whispers of the old gods stirred in the deep, I knew the truth. Drak'thul's warnings had not been madness, they had been prophecy. For when Deathwing shattered the world, the sea itself seemed to scream. And from the broken coast of the Swamp of Sorrows, strange tides rose, black with corruption, reeking of the void. Those who lived nearby spoke of ghostly lights drifting through the fog, and of a lone figure standing where the land met the water. His armor had turned to barnacle and rust, His body was little more than bone and sinew, but his eyes still burned, faint, blue, unyielding. Drak'thul had become something else, not living, not dead, bound to the whispers he once sought to silence. Some say he guards a relic, a stone carved with runes that predate the First War. Others say he is a herald, waiting for the day the ocean itself will march to war. But I know the truth. I saw it in his eyes that night, the sorrow of a warrior who fought for honor, lost it, and could never forgive himself. He did not serve N'Zoth for power. He served because he could not bear the weight of silence. He was the embodiment of the Horde's greatest wound, our thirst for meaning, in the face of eternal war. When the Horde burned Teldrassil and the world trembled once more, I thought of him again, of the ghost in the swamp who once believed he could save his people. And I wondered, perhaps he was right all along. Perhaps the true curse of the Horde is not its blood, nor its rage, but its endless search for redemption. For redemption, traveler, is a chain as cruel as any forged in hellfire. The fire crackles lower now. The night deepens. But listen close. Can you hear it? The soft lapping of unseen waters, the breath of something vast beneath the world. That is his legacy, the legend of the fallen hero of the Horde. Not a story of victory, but of sorrow. Not of conquest, but of a single soul who loved his people enough to damn himself for them. And when you travel east, past Deadwind Pass, and into the gray heart of the Swamp of Sorrows, you may yet hear his voice, whispering in the mist. The Horde endures, but so do its sins. You must understand something, traveler. There are wars fought with steel and fire, and there are wars fought in silence, in the dark corners of one's soul. Drak'thul fought both, and lost them all. When the cataclysm tore the world asunder, the Swamp of Sorrows split open. Old Draenei ruins sank beneath the rising tides, and the coastline receded until the marsh was half sea, half graveyard. From those waters came the Naga, worshippers of the deep, serpentine in form, twisted by the old god's will. The Alliance sent scouts. None returned. Even the goblins avoided those shores, saying the mist whispered names in their sleep. It was then, in those black years of upheaval, that rumors began to spread among the Horde. They spoke of an orc who commanded the tides, who stood upon the ruins of a drowned temple, chanting to the storm. Some said he was a ghost. Others said he was alive, sustained by some forgotten pact. I knew better. I had seen his eyes. I had heard his voice. Drak'thul was neither ghost nor mortal. He was the price of a promise made to the deep. So I went once more to the Swamp of Sorrows. The journey was long, and the land was unkind. The marsh had grown restless since the cataclysm, trees blackened by strange growths, pools shimmering with faint light from beneath. Frogs floated dead in the water, their skin blistered by corruption. The air tasted of salt and despair. By the time I reached the coast, the storm had already gathered. Lightning split the sky, revealing jagged rocks and the faint outline of the temple, half submerged now, its upper spire leaning like a wounded beast. And there, upon its crumbling steps, stood the fallen hero of the Horde. His back was to me, cloak whipping in the wind. The sea raged at his feet, yet he did not flinch. When he turned, I saw that time had devoured him completely. His face was drawn, the skin gray as driftwood, his eyes sunken pits of blue fire. "Drak'thul," I called out. "It is I, the Wanderer, who once shared your fire." His gaze found me, and for a heartbeat, recognition flickered there. Then came the faintest smile. "Ah, you still breathe," he said, his voice carrying through the storm as though the wind itself feared to drown it. "I envy you that." "What have you done?" I demanded. "The swamp is dying, the waters twist with corruption." He turned his eyes toward the horizon, where the clouds churned like ink. "I have done nothing," he said. "The world breaks itself. I merely listen." Listen to what? To the truth that sleeps beneath it. He stepped closer, and for the first time I saw the runes carved into his armor. Not orcish, not demonic, but something older. Symbols that hurt the eyes to look upon. "The Horde was born of desperation," he said softly. "We fled a dying world, burned by our own hand. We sought strength and found slavery. We sought redemption and found guilt. We build, destroy, rebuild, destroy again, always seeking something we cannot name." He looked at me then, and in his voice there was no madness, only weary clarity. "The sea knows no such hunger," he murmured. "It takes all things and remembers them. It does not judge. It does not forgive. It simply endures." I told him the Horde endured too, that Thrall had led us to a new home, that we had found peace among the races of Kalimdor. But he only laughed, not cruelly, but with infinite sadness. "Peace?" he said. "The Horde is at war with itself. The blood of the clans still burns with fell memory. We are beasts taught to speak of honor as though it were a weapon." He turned back to the sea. "They will call for war again. They always do. And when they do, the deep will answer." The waves struck the rocks below, spraying salt into the wind, and from that foam rose shapes, naga, dozens of them, their scales glinting with cold light. They did not attack, they knelt. "Do you see?" Drak'thul whispered. "Even monsters know devotion." I drew my blade. "You've betrayed your people." He turned to me then, and for a heartbeat, I saw not the mad hermit, but the warrior he once was, proud, scarred, and utterly broken. "I am my people," he said quietly. "I carry every death upon my soul, the fell, the fire, the blood, all of it. I sought forgiveness, and the elements turned away. But the sea listened. Lightning flashed. For an instant, the temple behind him shimmered, and I saw shapes beneath it, vast and shifting, like the shadows of titans moving in the dark water. He raised one hand, and the naga hissed in reverence. "It comes," he said, almost tenderly. "The great unmaking, the tide that will wash away the sins of both Horde and Alliance alike. You cannot stop it." "I can stop you," I said. He looked at me then, truly looked, as though seeing through me past me into the countless battles and losses that marked my own soul. "No," he said softly. "You cannot." He raised his other hand, and the storm obeyed him. The sea exploded upward, waves rising higher than any ship could endure. The air screamed with the sound of the deep, not wind, not thunder, but the voice of something that should not exist. I was thrown to the ground. My blade slipped from my grasp. The world dissolved into chaos, salt, water, darkness. And through it all, I heard him chanting, not in the language of the Horde, nor of demons, but in the tongue of the old gods, words that clawed at the edges of sanity. When I awoke, the storm was gone. The sky was clear. The temple had vanished beneath the waves. On the shore, half buried in wet sand, I found a fragment of his armor, a Frostwolf insignia, etched over with strange runes. Beside it lay footprints leading into the sea. They ended where the water began. I do not know if he drowned or if the waves took him willingly, but I know this: the sea was calm, and in that calm I heard a whisper, faint, almost kind. "Loktar, forgive me." The world moved on. Wars came and went. Garrosh rose and fell. Sylvanas burned the world tree and fled into the shadows. And through it all, the swamp of sorrows remained, still, watching, remembering. The Naga still haunt those waters, but they are restless, unmoored. Their master is gone. Or perhaps he became the tide itself. Some sailors swear that in great storms, when thunder rolls across the sea and the waves strike like hammers, they hear a voice, deep and mournful, calling orders in the old Horde tongue. Some claim to see an orc's figure standing atop the waves, his cloak billowing like smoke, his eyes twin beacons of cold blue light. They call him the Tidebreaker. Others, the drowned war chief. But those who know, those who remember the wars that shaped us, they call him what he was and what he remains, the fallen hero of the Horde. For though his body was claimed by the sea, his spirit endures, not as a monster, but as a warning, that no matter how far we flee, our past follows, that every victory leaves a shadow, that redemption, when sought too deeply, becomes its own curse. And when the waves grow high and the wind carries the scent of salt and sorrow, I remember his final words, not shouted in anger, but whispered in weary truth. The Horde endures, but so do its sins. So now, traveler, you know why I sit here at the fire's edge, speaking to the night, why I pour this ale for the dead before I drink for the living. For in every battle cry, in every oath sworn beneath red banners, I hear him, the ghost of the swamp, the voice of regret. And if someday the sea rises to swallow us all, I will not fear, for I know who leads the tide. It has been many years since I last saw the swamp of sorrows. I am an old orc now, bones heavy as wet stone, breath thin as morning mist. But sometimes, when the wind turns from the east and carries the scent of brine, I dream of that shore. I dream of a gray horizon, of ruins half buried in the tide, of a voice speaking from the deep, not to command, not to curse, but to remember. You see, the world has not healed. The Horde still bleeds, though its banners change, its war chiefs rise and fall. Each new generation believes it has found the true path, the pure flame. And each time, that flame burns another name into the sand. But perhaps that is the way of things. Perhaps the Horde is not meant for peace. Perhaps we are the keepers of memory, those who bear the weight of what the world wishes to forget. I have seen the desert bloom in Durotar, the towers rise in Orgrimmar, the laughter of younglings who never knew the taste of fell. It is good, and it is fragile. They speak of honor with bright eyes, as though it were a new song. They do not know how old the melody is, how many have sung it before the end. Sometimes I envy them. Other nights, when the stars vanish behind the fog and the fire sinks to embers, I think I hear the old drums again, slow, distant, carried on a tide that never rests. Not a call to war. No, never that, but a heartbeat. The heartbeat of a world that refuses to die. It is then I pour the last of my ale upon the ground. 1 cup for the Horde, 1 cup for the fallen, and 1 always for Drak'thul. For though he was lost, he was not evil. He was the echo of our guilt, given shape and sorrow. He was the proof that even in ruin, a warrior's heart may still seek truth. When I close my eyes, I see him standing upon the water, shoulders straight, eyes bright with calm defiance. The storm around him fades, and the sea lies smooth as glass. He looks not to the sky, nor to the land, but down into the depths, where the world hides its oldest wounds. He does not beg, he does not boast, he simply listens. Perhaps that is what awaits us all, in the end, not judgment, but silence. A place where the noise of war is gone, where even the old gods cannot reach, where the spirit may at last be still. I hope he found it. The night deepens. The fire sighs and falls into ash. Somewhere beyond the reeds, a frog croaks once, then stops. The air smells of rain. You will sleep soon, traveler. When you do, and the world drifts away, remember this. Every hero of the Horde, every soul who marched beneath the crimson banner, carries a shadow. But shadows are not evil. They are the proof of light. Drak'thul's story is not one of despair, but of balance. He sought peace in darkness and found a kind of grace. He became the voice that reminds us what we must never become again. So when you hear the sea at night, that endless breathing, that patient rhythm, think of him, not as a monster, nor as a ghost, but as a guardian, a watcher beneath the waves, whispering to those who still fight to be more than their past. He whispers to me still. He whispers to the Horde. He whispers to you. Loktar Ogar, he says, not as a cry for victory, but as a blessing. Victory or death, both are rest, both are peace. And then the voice fades, and there is only the sound of the tide, rolling forever. Sleep now, traveler. The fire is gone. The stars are hidden. The swamp is quiet, and the legend has been told. Somewhere far away, the waves break against forgotten stones, and a weary spirit keeps his watch. The Horde endures, and so does he.